Good morning again. This is Rabbi Shlomo First. Today I'm substituting for Rabbi Reuven Levitt. Here in Shkafa. So we're dealing with a certain question occurred to me. End of Parshas Bo. We have two Parshas. Vayat Ki Yiviecha, and that's in Pasuk Yud Aleph in Kapitel of Perek Yud Gimel and Shmos, and then the next one is by the Maftir, Vayaki Yishalcha, Yinka Machar, Lemor, Mazos, Ramarta Elav, Proposing Yad, Mitzvanu, Hashem in Mitzrayim, Mibeis Avim. You have these parshas. And actually, Roy, you were right. We go back to Shvi, the beginning of Yud Gimel, right? That's Kadosh Li Kol Bechor. You have this, the first of the last two parshas of Parshas Bo, and that's what's known as the parsha, the paragraph called Kadosh Li Kol Bechor, and then you have the second one which you read, Vayet Ki Yiviecha. These are two parshas. If you look at the Siddur here, where page Yud Tet in the Siddur. This is in the Hakadama. Many say, it's actually put down in the Torah, if I'm not mistaken, you should say this paragraph before putting on tefillin. Some say a shortened version, but in putting on tefillin, that paragraph right there, right? Hineni. You like to read it?
Hineni Mukhan, V'hanachas. Behold, I am prepared and content.
In the laying of tefillin, in the placing of the tefillin, V'hanachas tefillin, the placing of tefillin.
Hanach is tefillin?
Hanach is the place.
The place of placing of tefillin. The kayem, and to establish, mitzvah, to fulfill the commandment, bori.
Of my Creator.
Bori, of my Creator.
Right, so a person putting on tefillin, one of the primary thoughts he should have when he's putting on tefillin, he's doing this act, putting on the tefillin shal yad, the tefillin shal rosh, in order to fulfill a commandment of a Kadosh Baruch.
Okay. Shit siv anu, that we were commanded, the haniach, to place tefillin.
Right, the Kadosh Baruch commands us to
put on
tefillin.
Katasu Besorah, it's the Torah, it's written in the Torah, Uke Shartem, the os, Shartam, the os, and they will be for a sign.
Actually, you should tie them. Kesher is a knot. Right? So they should be tied, to be bound.
Bind them for a sign, al yadecha, on your arm. And they will be for frontlets, bein einecha, between your eyes. Veheim, and they are four parshiot elu. There are four parshios in the tefillin.
Right. So what are you supposed to put on your arm and on your vein einecha? That should be the four parshios. And then, of course, you have the boxes which surround them and the straps which
the same in the arm and the head.
They are, but they're not in the same fashion. In the rosh, there are four compartments. Each parsha has its own compartment.
Right.
In the yad, it's one scroll that's in one compartment.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Shema, v'aya'im shemo'ah, and it will be, if you will listen, Kadesh. Is that what Kadosh?
No, that's what we just read. That was the part. That was the pasuk case in Perek Yud Gimel. Right on, you published there.
Got it.
Take a look. That's Kadosh Li Kol Bechor. Now you see it then.
was that?
Yeah, right, go one back, one page back,
Those are pages.
about 5 lines down perhaps. 6. Oops, maybe go back.
Kaddish Likol. Okay. V'haya ki yiviacha.
That's the next part. The page that turn the page, and you'll see
Right,
that's
that's the one we
that's-
started with.
that's the one we started
When
with.
Hashem will bring us to Eretz Yisrael.
That's right. So we have four parshas. Okay, we don't need to consider too much. Hold it, keep the consider up in case we'll need it to reference some other things. But you have 4 parshas, Shema, right? V'yayim Shemoya, and you have
The first two paragraphs.
first two, those were the first two paragraphs of Shema, when I say Shema Yisrael, the 3 paragraphs of the first 2 of the 3 paragraphs. They have Kaddish, V'yikol B'chor, V'yayim Yiviecha. So you have these 4 parshas which are written in the Tefillin, right? If the Tefillin are missing any one of these parshas, even one of the osios of any of these parshas, the Tefillin are invalid. You're putting on an empty black box. Right? So what occurred to me yesterday during the Kriyas of Torah, so if you look back at the Chumash, so at the beginning of Shvi is the last of the 7th, that's the 7th of the year. So before that, the Kadosh Baruch was talking to Moshe Rabbeinu. If you look back on in Perek Yud Beis, Mem Gimel, right? The previous parsha to that was Hashem was speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu. V'yomer Hashem el Moshe, Baron, Zos Chukos HaPesach, Kol ben Necher lo yochel boy. These are the rules, the regulations, the laws of the Korban Pesach, right? And that's something had to do with the Pesach, what we call Pesach Ladoros. Everything that's not relevant simply to the Pesach that was brought and eaten when we came out of Mitzrayim on that night of Pesach Mitzrayim. But this is something a similar, very similar restatement of many of the laws relevant to Pesach, what we call the doors, for all generations. Some things were relevant only to that one time in Mitzrayim, and some are relevant to everything in every generation following. And then finally you have the last pasuk of that, which was actually a new parsha, Nun Aleph, V'yi be'etzem hayom hazeh, otzi Hashem es b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim al tzivot. And then we have now V'yiber Moshe Lemor Kaddish Nikol B'chor. So several points that hopefully we can discuss. Number 1 is of the first 2 parshas that we read in the Siddur, the Shema V'yim Shemoya. Those were parshas that were written in parshas in Sefer Devarim. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu said Shema, that was in parshas Vayeskana, right? And Shemoya is in another parsha, if I'm not mistaken, right? So general consensus is the words that we have in Sefer Devarim were the words that Moshe Rabbeinu said to Klal Yisrael at the end of the 40 years of his last days in this world, right? So you have these 2 parshas which theoretically were said 40 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim, number 1, right? Number 2 is that we have these 2 parshas which raise the question as to when did Klal Yisrael first start keeping the mitzvah of tefillin. Okay? I mean, in these parshas, both the first one, right, Kaddish Li and Vayim Yivoya, tefillin is mentioned, right? Tefillin is mentioned in both of these parshas. Now, as to whether or not this is a command for Klal Yisrael to put on tefillin at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? There are certain mitzvahs which we got before the giving of the Torah. right? For example, you'll take a look in Parshas Yisro. Okay. That should be. The mitzvahs that we were given at Morah was Shabbos, you would have an aim, right? Those, there's a Rashi, it may be in Parshas Mishpatim, it may be. Oh, very good. Okay, turn to page. I'll tell you where it is. It's in Perek Chav Gimel. Perek Chav Gimel. It's Pasuk Zayin, which is, if you want to go quicker, Kuf Chav Beis. In the Chumash you have, it's page Kuf Chav Beis.
So it's in
Mishpatim, right? Chav Daled, Parsha Chav Daled, Pasuk Zayin. Have it there?
Yep.
Pasuk Zayin.
Got it.
Got it there, Roy? Pasuk Zayin. Yeah. Lou, you like to read Pasuk? Go ahead.
Sure. Vayikach Sefer Habris, and he took the book of the covenant, Vayikra, and he called the Aznei to the ears, or
In the
he
ears.
read in the ears Ha'am of the nation, Vayamaru, and they said, Kol Asher Diber Hashem, all that Hashem has said, not seven Ishma. Oh, that's famous passage.
Famous Pasuk, right? So what's
Well,
the
here we will do.
right? So what's Sefer Abris? Take a look at Rashi. Right? What's Sefer Abris? Rashi, that's 4 lines into the Rashi in the right-hand column. Got it there?
Sefer Abris. Mi Bereshis va'ad Matan Torah, from beginning of the Torah until the giving of the Torah.
That's right. From the
The
beginning
discussion of
of
the giving of the Torah.
Right.
Umitzvos shenitztavu b'mara,
Right.
and the mitzvahs that were given
Right.
in Mara.
Right. The mitzvahs that were given in Morah. Right. So
So there's two things in the Sefer Habris.
Yes.
There's from the beginning of the Torah until the giving of the Torah, and there's the mitzvahs that were given at Mara.
that's right.
Interesting.
But Morah was before Matan Torah.
Morah was before Matan Torah, right?
So
That's
why does he have to say? Why does he have to say that?
It was up till Ad Matan Torah. That seems to be good. That is a good question. I was bothered by that as well. That's
Well, because they're not explicit in the Torah. The Torah doesn't state explicitly what mitzvahs were given at Mara.
Sure does. Yeah, at Morah.
well,
It says he threw the wood into the water and it got sweet, but I don't remember it saying anything about specific mitzvahs.
We will see that in a moment. That'll be this week's parsha. That'll be this week's parsha. A minute. That will be, go back to this week's parsha, Parshas V'Shalach. Okay, Parshas V'Shalach, Perek Tezvav. Perek Tezvav. Pasuk, Chav Beis. Right after we came out of the Yam Suf, we Tikach Miriam, right? After they increased the Shira Yam, then Tikach Miriam. Then the next parsha after that is Pasuk Chav Beis. Tezvav. Perek Tezvav, Pasuk Chav Beis.
Sanaches. Eight Sanaches.
Sanaches?
Yeah. Sanaches, yeah.
Memches. No, Sanaches.
What's the pasuk again?
One second, no. Your Samach, you have a difference there. Our page in yours is different. Mine's Ayin Dalet in mine. Let me see this one.
Shalach Yidal.
V'Shalach, Tezvav.
Tezvav.
Tezvav. No problem. Tezvav. You can make too far. Tezvav. This is Tezvav.
Okay, Tezvav.
Tezvav, Pasuk Chav Beis.
Got it.
Okay. Who'd like to read? Lauren? And we all have the place, right? Chav Beis, V'yisa Moshe. Yeah?
V'yasa Moshe es Yisrael Yam Suf v'yetzu el midbar Shur v'yelchu shlosh yishamim v'midbar v'lo matzamayim. And Moshe led Bnei Yisrael from the Yam Suf, and they went to Midbar Shur, the desert of Shur, and they walked there 3 days in the desert, and they did not find Mayim. V'yavol Marasa, they came to Mara, v'lo yachlu lishtos Mayim mimara kimarim haim. They came to Mara, and they could not drink the water there because it was bitter. Ken Kara Shema Mara, that's why it's called Mara, so it was bitter.
Good. So far, so good?
Vayilonu ha'am al Moshe, the people complained to Moshe, Lemor, Ma Nishta, what are we supposed to drink? Yitzhak el Hashem, V'yardu Hashem eitz, V'yashlech el hamayim, V'yitku hamayim sham lo chok nishpat v'sham misal. And Moshe cried to Hashem,
Right.
and he set down a stick.
Yerehu. I'm trying to figure out what that lashon is. What's the proper understanding? Yerehu.
That was something like he gave to him,
Yeah.
or indicated to him. I guess because Moshe, because Moshe had his own. It was Moshe's staff.
That was the staff. I'm not sure if it was staff. Okay, let's leave that for now. I'm not
Okay.
sure what.
Eighth
Could it be that he showed, Hashem showed Moshe?
You
Ready
ready?
for that?
Possibly.
Vayishlach el hamayim, and he put it into and he sent it into the water. Yim teku, and sweetened it. Hamayim, sham lo chok mishpat. There was chok and mishpat. V'sham nisa. It was chok and mishpat. I guess this is the dinner they received there.
Right. We'll see the Rashi on that in a moment. But, okay, instructed him. You from Horah,
Yeah.
so instructed him. Good.
So he told him what to do.
Right.
And he put the stick in the water and it sweetened it. And they had sweetening water there so they could drink it. And Sham lo chok mishpat. There was chok mishpat was there.
Right. V'sham, some lo, like he gave. Some is to place or to give. V'sham, some lo choiku mishpat. V'sham, so from there they traveled on. There, so there at Mara, he gave, Hashem gave to Moshe choiku mishpat, and from there they traveled on from there. Look at the Rashi. What's the choiku mishpat?
Sham lo. Gemara natan lehem mitzas parsha shel Torah. He gave some of the parshas of Torah. She yistasku bahem Shabbos upara aduma v'dinim.
So there you have several things that they were given. Right. Now, why do we went?
What's dini?
Didn't you like
Laws?
Laws of
Monetary.
kosher mishpat and monetary financial.
There's some laws, but we don't know which ones.
Yeah, we maybe know which ones, but Rashi doesn't go into details. Let's see.
Paraduma, that's an odd one.
Could be that they needed paradum because they had to be purified when they got to Har Sinai, right? They had to be purified, so that might have been necessary.
So you think they did a paraduma, they sacrificed a paraduma?
Perhaps. We'd have to understand why that was specifically given.
It seems like it wasn't very much time to do that.
Well, actually, we take a look at the timeline here.
6 weeks.
Yeah, about 6 weeks or so.
This is it, because Kriyas Yamsuf was a week after Pesach.
Right.
This is 3 days after that. So you have 5.5 weeks left before.
I guess they had flocks, so they could have found one without too much trouble.
Yeah. Okay. That requires why these were singled out, right? Why that they
They need a
so.
Mizbeach.
Before Matan Torah, before Beis Hamikdash, not necessarily. Actually, the paradum is one that is not necessarily the Mizbeach. There's no hakrava, there's no offering it on the done chutz the Matan. It's actually done outside the Mikdash. That's one of the few. The question whether paradum is really considered to be a korban or not. It's a whole.
And whether or not they did it there, we know Moshe did do a paraduma.
Obviously, it's necessary.
Oh, for
Two
sure.
misnames,
So-
yeah.
Right.
And
So
they
it
all
was
come
later.
in Mace. And
Right.
he did give them Hazah. They did sprinkle part of the three things that took place before Matan Torah. It was besides Mila, and it was also Hazah. That's a pasuk he actually sprinkled them. Now I imagine he was sprinkled with the Meichatas, with the Paraduma. But the reason we're here, what's this relevant to what we started out with? Tefillin is not mentioned here, right? Tefillin is not mentioned here. Right? So first of all, if you now go back to where we started at the end of Parshas Bo, right? These last two Parshas that we were discussing, in general, it's not such a difficulty because if you remember the general rule that ein muchur muktam b'Torah, meaning the Torah is not chronologically bound. Right? There's no necessity of chronology in the Torah.
But isn't there a principle that unless there's some good reason, the Torah does go in order?
Yeah, I mean, in general, you would like to understand things chronologically, but that's not what the Torah is. The Torah is not coming to teach us chronology,
Right.
right? So the Torah is teaching us many different things on many different levels and dimensions, and if it would be chronologically bound, it would be severely limited in what we could learn from the Torah, right? So these two last parshas, right, Vayi Shemoya, Kadeshli, and Vayayiki Yiriecha, are not necessarily had been said to Moshe Rabbeinu at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Number one.
Yeah, they seem, I mean, again, things don't necessarily have to follow, but they seem totally disjointed from what we've been doing so far. Your Peterachem,
Yes.
Bechor Chamor,
Right.
like you're out of the, it's almost out of the blue.
Yeah.
You've got these din in here.
Right. They're both attached and related to Yetzias Mitzrayim. Peterachem is because of Malchus Bechoros, right? Tefillin is Eichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. They're very closely related to. I remember hearing from a tape from Victor Miller, Tefillin, what one of the understandings we can have about Tefillin is that it was, and if you notice any of the pictures of the old Egyptian pictures, that they're wearing something on their head, which is that used to be a sign of royalty, that they would wear that thing on their head. Yeah, that was a sign of Egyptian royalty. So Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give us a similar sign of royalty, but obviously he did it with more things of understanding what the psukim mean and how he was supposed to read to it on a regular daily basis, right? So Tefillin is very related to Yetzias Mitzrayim. So I suppose it's an appropriate place to put it. Obviously, it's the most appropriate place to put these psukim, these parshas, but they're not necessarily given to Moshe Rabbeinu to give to Klal Yisrael at the time of coming out of Mitzrayim, right? That's number one. Number two, right, is the question we asked at the beginning: when was the mitzvah of Tefillin given to Klal Yisrael? So you have that it was not included in the mitzvahs that were given in the Gemara, and then if that is the case, then most likely it's the Kriya at the Matan Torah. Matan Torah. If that's the case, we have another question to ask and try and understand, is that you have these parshas, whenever they were said to Moshe Rabbeinu, that's one thing. However, the other two, either Shema, Vayim, Shemoah, those were the words of Moshe Rabbeinu as he was talking to Klal Yisrael ostensibly during his last days in life, which was 40 years after Matan Torah, after the Kriyas Yansuf, after the Yetziah from Mitzrayim. So that was 40 years later. What did we do the day after Matan Torah, when early in the morning we were supposed to put on tefillin? If the words of Moshe Rabbeinu said 40 years hence are supposed to be included in the tefillin, right? So when we came back from Har Sinai, knowing all the halachas that we were supposed to fulfill the next day, so when we got busy after coming back from Har Sinai, back to our tents, we got busy writing parshas, right? Roy? You have to become an instant scribe, right?
We know we didn't do bris milah when we were in the part, so maybe we didn't do tefillin either.
It'd be a very big chiddush to say that. I mean, it possibly could be, but for 40 years not to fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin.
Well, isn't there a principle that tefillin is an os?
Yes.
And maybe we had other osim, right? We had the manna, we had the well, we had a miraculous existence. So maybe we didn't need that os at that time, just like we don't need it on Shabbos.
Yeah, well, we were keeping Shabbos, and Midbar we were keeping Shabbos, right?
Right, because Shabbos is an os also,
Right,
right?
Shabbos is also as well. Right, bris milah is an ois, right? And then the third ois is tefillin.
So we didn't have bris. We did have Shabbos.
The reason we didn't have bris because
Two
it was
out of
second.
three,
Yeah, it was a bit of a sakana to do it in the midbar, but it doesn't seem logical to me that we had to wait 40 years for Moshe Rabbeinu to say those words of Shema and Re'im Shemoya until we started keeping the mitzvah of tefillin, right? What you could say is that Moshe Rabbeinu came down and just like he told everybody, the tefillin have to be black. You have to take straps and then tie them this way and tie them that way, and it has to be 4 compartments in the shal rosh and 1 compartment in the shalyad. And that's not. There's no specification of all these halachas in the Torah itself. This is what we know is known to us as halacha Moshe Messina. When Moshe Rabbeinu came down for 40 days and 40 nights, spending by getting all of the Torah from Kodesh Baruch Hu. He came down and told Klal Yisrael exactly what they have to do to fulfill every mitzvah.
Did he get all the Torah, or did he get the Torah over the 40-year period?
Well, he was told to write the Torah during the 40-year period, meaning certain things like Parshas the Kairach, right? Right, Kairach occurred. So the fact that that's a parsha in the Torah, right? The fact that it occurred, right, was a event, right? The fact that it's written in the Torah is something completely separate than that. Right? There are a lot of events that occurred in the midbar, right?
Right.
40 years, a lot of things were taking place, right? Kairach was an event that the Kodesh Baruch Hu, right, wanted to give significance to have it written in the Torah, right? There may be other, who knows what kind of events took place in the midbar.
So it was written after it happened?
Yeah. Mishra was pretty busy. That he says, the Medrash says he was busy all night long, going from person to person, trying to convince them not to go and to follow Korach. And Korach was busy lobbying to get people to go ahead and do it. Right? So Moshe Rabbeinu was busy. He wasn't. He may not have been told to write it down until after the event. I mean, at the final day of his life, Moshe Rabbeinu was told to write everything. The more Makos questions how Moshe Rabbeinu could have written the last, I think, 7 words that Moshe Avdi Hashem was nifter, he was dead, and so how can a person write about his own death until it actually happens? And if this happened, how can he write it? So more than Marcos goes into.
How do you write 12 Sefer Torah in the last?
Yeah, and also that's also how can you write? Look, how could he and Aaron pick up 12,000 Levim in one day? Wave them like a lulav and Esra. So a lot of we live with miracles. That's not difficult, right? When you want to do something spiritual, all the doors are open. No question about it. So it could be the way I've come to understand it, at least for now, is that Moshe Rabbeinu probably had an understanding what the parshas of Tefillin are supposed to be. And these are the words you're supposed to write. I mean, you're supposed to.
And then he said them later on.
And he said them later on, right? They were written, and then he said these words.
And Hashem said, have tefillin. This is 4 parts. You have to write. Okay, and then Moshe, whenever there was an appropriate time for Moshe to say them, he said them.
Mm-hmm. He announced them to Klal Yisrael.
And when they all wrote their first tefillin, he said, "This is what you write."
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
fine.
This is what we're supposed to write. This is what we write.
Yeah, that's very simple. Just write whatever he tells you to write. Okay. At some point later, it was decided these needed to be written in the Torah itself. It didn't have to be.
It didn't have to be.
It didn't have to be.
Right.
So Hashem said, "Write these parshas in Torah. Write this one here, and write this one here, and that one over there." So Moshe did. But again.
And yet there's also the issue of understanding. It's not just a matter of writing a bunch of words. We're supposed to understand what the tefillin say. And study it, the deep significance of it.
Of course.
So he had to include the context also of what they meant.
There's probably some explanation. Yeah.
Well, we know, when he goes over to Dvorim, he's the repetitions of mitzvahs and things like that are worded slightly differently than the first time.
Right.
And it's what he taught during the 40 years in the desert, and he wrote them down. That's where they ended up when he wrote them down.
Right. But we learned specific lessons from the
Right.
difference.
But I'm saying we could have learned all of Shema, the day after Matan Torah. We could have learned the union of Shema. It's a question of when it got written in the Torah. It's not, they don't necessarily, it's not contradictory to say that Moshe taught us Shema the day after Matan Torah.
Right.
And he wrote it.
We could say he taught us the 4 parshas also.
Yeah, I'm saying. And then when
But
it
not
got to
just
writing
the
it.
words, he taught us the meaning of it.
Right. And the time to write it, when he was getting ready to write it, Hashem said, this is where you should write it.
Right. Like you could ask the question also, like, how do we fulfill the Kriya Shema, the day after Matan Torah? Right? Let's say, so we had just, didn't have a siddur or whatever it was, but they were told to say that, but that was them. So, Moshe Rabbeinu said it later. It could be, I'm not sure.
He had a lot to say when he came down from the first thing.
Of course, yeah, he was very busy. Very busy. It could be that, I'm not sure, that maybe those parshas were not even said at the end of the 40 years. Maybe they were said later on, and Hashem told Moshe to insert those in Sefer Devarim. I don't know. I'm sure, besides saying whatever he said in those last days of his life to Klal Yisrael that are written in Sefer Devarim, he said many things during the 40 years in the Midbar as well,
Right.
which may be included in. When was, for example, when were when were the right? V'yomer Hashem el Moshe Lemor Kadesh li Kol B'chor Peter Rekem. B'nei Yisrael B'Adam U'B'nei Yehu. So when did Hashem say that to Moshe? Right? Not necessarily when we came straight out of Mitzrayim, but it could have been days, years later. But it was now told to be inserted at this point. So that was concerning me during Shabbos. So you satisfied, Rory? Does it please you?
Nothing pleases Roy. Come on, Roy, say something.
Elucidate us.
He's thinking. Usually when he has what to say,
He's not
gonna
thinking,
think.
no. His mind is a blank slate.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that's what I thought about.
So we're not sure exactly what Moshe did on Har Sinai as opposed to during the 40 years.
Well, he was taught Kol Torah Kul. He was taught everything that was necessary to teach Klal Yisrael. Now again, there might have been
But, like,
things
for example, he wasn't taught the law of the Durnas of Slavsaka. Because he goes and asks Moshe at the time.
Yeah.
I asked Hashem.
Right. Certain things came up later. Yeah. Certain things came up later.
Could you translate the first sentence again? In a name
Yeah. Okay. Hine muchan. Oh, you said yeah. Hine muchan. I am prepared. Hineni. I am prepared. Mechavein to concentrate with the thoughts. Nachas tefillin during the time I'm placing the tefillin on me. L'kayim mitzvahs bori to fulfill mitzvahs bori to fulfill the commandment of my Creator.
Oh, I see. My creator.
Right, bori, right.
Because when you translate the first time, I think you said Hashem.
Bori is literally my Creator. Bori, my Creator. Right. So it's very important that it's explained in the Torah, and the Shabbat also brings it down. The person is supposed to really have these kavanas that are very important in the fulfillment of the mitzvah of tefillin, 2 mitzvahs of tefillin. Lacking these parshas, there wouldn't be kosher tefillin. Okay, it's a Shem. The Moshe starts what, in 5 minutes? 7:30?
Yeah.
So we'll take a bit of a break. Good.